Welcome, everyone, to the Tethys Shipyards. I am Takeshi Yamato, the Yard Master, joining our host, the Housecoat Gamer. Ah! Here is time for our next ship from the book. And technically, we have gone from 359ers to Sector 001. Today, we're looking at the Steamrunner class. Statted in the book, but the book stats just don't work. Alright, let's start with the lore. According to the book, this thing has a launch year of 2370. Primary shipyards are the Antares Fleet shipyards at Antares, the Copernicus shipyards at Luna, and the Imperial Fleet yards at Andoria. Overview. Low mass and fast, the Steamrunner class filled multiple roles in Starfleet, including light escort, interceptor, electronic warfare, and surveillance intelligence. The design consisted of an angular saucer for a primary hull containing all vital systems and a detached secondary hull that was suspended between the starship's two warp nacelles. The internal spaces of the vessel were such that it was much faster to assemble than other classes of similar volume, making this vessel surprisingly common in the home fleets of the core worlds of the Federation as they underwent shakedown cruises. During the Dominion War, many Steamrunners were assigned to lead groupings of starships tasked with raiding behind enemy lines.
Sorry about that. It just seemed to be almost ready to cut out.
Oh. During the Dominion War, many Steamrunners were assigned to lead groupings of starships tasked with raiding behind enemy lines or performing high warp speed observations. Capabilities. As the primary role of the Steamrunner was to be intelligence gathering and surveillance, Starfleet ordered that sensor systems be given a high priority in allocation of the internal space. The number of EM and subspace scanning devices requires the use of 3 separate isolinear computer cores, one of which not only deals with incoming data from aft sensors and the deflector array, but also controls the electronic warfare systems, transporter systems, and the warp field stabilizer that allows the Steamrunner class to maintain high warp speeds for longer durations than other vessels of its mass. The high warp velocities and excellent sensors meant that Starfleet often assigned these vessels to medium duration exploration missions or deep space patrols. Refits and variants. A refit program is underway for the Steamrunner, focusing on reinforcing the vessel's small secondary hull located at the far aft of the vessel, as well as improving some of the systems there. Suggested mission profiles are Pathfinder and reconnaissance operations, tactical operations, and crisis and emergency response. Naming conventions. Steamrunner class vessels take their names from many different Earth traditions, as the majority are manufactured in the Sol system or at human colonies. Andorian-built vessels are named after very famous warriors of the past. Phaethon, Novastella, and Diago Maru are examples. And the notable starship is the USS Appalachia. Anyway, space frame stats. Trait, Federation starship. Scale 4. Systems values are comms 9, computers 9, engines 10, sensors 10, structure 9, weapons 9. Its department values are 1 point each in con, security, and science. It has phaser arrays, photon torpedoes, a strength 3 tractor beam. Its talents are advanced sensor suites and improved warp drive. And according to a special rule in the book, this thing can jettison that small secondary hull as an emergency boats. I don't see any seams. Do you?
Not really. I apologize for my silence, but I'm angry. Just enraged.
Yeah, I can understand that because that is. Ah. All right, Ron, your go.
Alright, let's clear up this stupidity. Starting with a simple freaking number. 53504. You want to know what that number is? The registry code for the USS Pathfinder. But the USS Steamrunner, the Pathfinder of the entire class. Meaning, this is a pretty old design. In fact, it contains several design elements that, to me, scream Ambassador class. Notably, the Hussard collectors.
Yeah. So
Anything
how
else?
old?
Judging from the reef, judging from the design, from the registry code, I'm gonna have to say it's almost as old as the New Orleans class.
So 2340 something. I put the New Orleans at 2344.
I'm gonna say 2340 even.
2340. Okay. So.
And considering the Federation was in the middle of a massive border war with the Cardassians, they may not be in near peer power, but they're still enough of a pain in the ass to require actual combat-capable vessels, of which the Steamrunner is one of.
Yeah. And speaking of, I can see this thing as possibly... I can see the potential of this thing in a recon role, but... Well, apart from the movies showing up in First Contact, the first time I really saw this thing in use was in Star Trek Armada.
I was wondering which one of us was going to mention the Steamrunner's most famous role.
Yes. In Armada, this thing was not a recon boat. This did not go in to get scans of the enemy forces. No. This thing hung back and let rip with tricobalt torpedoes. This thing is not a recon boat. This thing is an artillery ship.
And considering the sheer number of... How many of those little things are there?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
In theory, that could be 10 launchers for tricobalt torpedoes. Because those do not seem like... Those aren't transporter strips. That's just above. And I don't think those are sensor arrays either.
Yeah. So, yeah, this thing is more of an artillery ship.
And it's been stated that tricobalt torpedoes need special launchers. Those may just be the special launchers.
Yeah.
So we're going to classify this ship as more of an artillery cruiser than anything else. Sure, it can fight, but it's more meant to make your day suck from long range.
Yeah. This thing can defend itself with phaser arrays and possibly even regular photon torpedoes. But if you're in range for photon torpedoes and phasers, then someone is doing... But if you're in range for phasers and photon torpedoes, someone is doing something wrong.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. So this thing isn't a recon boat. Some ships during the Dominion War might have been modified for that purpose.
Probably because of the lack of artillery support.
Yeah. But this thing's main goal is this thing's main role is to sit in the rear edges of a conflict and let fly with the heavy artillery. It'll let this. This is the Akira class would be a frontline ship, even if it also has carrier capabilities. The Saber would be a frontline ship. Those two fight on the front lines, while this thing sits in the safety of the rear and just makes the bad guys, just makes the enemy's day that much harder.
And maybe during the Dominion War, some of the ships, if not all of them, were just retrofit with better sensor arrays, due to a shortage of tricobalt torpedoes.
Yeah.
Still, the ship would serve as a frontline combatant during the Battle of Sector 001 with the USS Appalachia.
Yeah.
Perhaps there was a new strategy in play. They thought they could lob torpedoes, tricobalt torpedoes at the cube. Maybe that would explain why the cube took so much damage before it,
Yeah. So, let's see about getting some stats in for this. Let's see about adjusting the stats for this. So, 2370 to 2340. Let's see, that's 57 to 54. 9, 9, 9, 9. 4 nines, that's 36. Plus 11, that's 47. Plus 10, that's 57. Okay, we need to take 3 points away from this thing.
We can't take anything away from sensors. You need eyes to see where you're shooting.
Yeah. Well, what we could do, what I'm thinking of here. First up, we could reduce sensors to 9 and bring comms up to 10.
Spotters.
Yeah. It relies on targeting data from the frontline ships rather than its own sensors.
That I can live with. Structure is probably going to stay the same because this is a really mean little boat.
Yeah. Engines 11? I mean, for a high-speed recon boat, I can see it. But for an artillery ship?
Which this clearly is.
Yeah, I'm going to bring the engines down at least to 9.
I'd bring it down to 8.
Okay. And, well, that basically covers all the alterations. 4 nines, 36, plus 8, that's 44, plus 10, that's 54. Though we could make some further adjustments if we wanted to bring the weapons up to 10.
We'll just let that be a refit thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be in service for a while.
Yeah. And department values. 1 point each, con, security, and science. For an artillery vessel, I'm going to take that point from science and put it into security.
Because tricobalt torpedo.
Yeah. So 1 point in con, 2 points in security. This thing doesn't have the same amount of boom as the Defiant, but it has a much more potent boom. As such.
Torpedoes.
Yeah. Which I'm going to put into the weapon list. In addition to its current phaser arrays and photon torpedoes. Tricobalt torpedoes. Speaking of, those are mentioned in the weapon lists, so I might as well discuss what tricobalt torpedoes are capable of. Standard photon torpedoes have a stress rating of 3 plus security and the high yield weapon quality. Tricobalt torpedoes have a rating of 4 plus security, the area stress effect, which damages the target in any vessel or damageable object in contact range, and then one additional target within close range of the initial target for each effect rolled, starting with the closest, and the calibration weapon quality, which means it cannot be used to attack unless a prepare minor action is performed during the same turn. And both torpedoes have the long range ability, have a weapon range of long, meaning this thing is fired at a distance. But I might take a page from the FFG Star Wars system here and give this thing a range of and say that tricobalt torpedoes have a range of extreme, meaning you can fire this thing at a range when no one else can fire any of their torpedoes at you.
It's a siege cruiser. What did you expect?
Yes. Now, talents.
Obviously, obviously expanded munitions.
Right. Well, expanded munitions would be if you wanted to add any extra weapons to this. But I don't think advanced sensor suites or improved warp drive work here.
Probably rapid-fire torpedo launchers for obvious reasons.
Yeah, rapid-fire torpedo launchers and let's say secondary reactors.
Yeah, that'll do.
Rapid-fire torpedo launcher and secondary reactors.
Forgive my cackling. I love the Steamrunner in Armada and Armada 2.
I did too. Don't get me wrong. I did too. But yeah. So secondary reactors offsets the fact that the engine's value is so low compared to its book stats.
I suppose this gives us an excuse to take a look at the Appalachia.
Well, we could if we wanted. I mean, has the Appalachia gotten a proper update?
I don't think it needs it. I mean, look at it.
I mean, is it up to basically modern quality?
It was modern quality when it launched.
Okay. Well, we can look. I suppose we can look at it.
The one that needed the update was the Steamrunner.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and set up a document for us for it while you do your thing.
Oh, I already know the lore for this thing. According to her registry code, she's probably another one of the last ships to launch before the attack on Mars. Though in this case, I'm going to say she launched from Andoria.
Okay.
Despite the fact that she has that she shares a name with a Earth-built Steamrunner class starship, the Appalachia was actually born in the shipyards over Andoria, and is basically the Steamrunner on steroids, adding more phaser, more power, longer range sensors, phaser cannons, because the ship actually has to fight, and of course, more torpedo tubes. Because she fulfills the same role as her ancestor did, firing nothing but torpedoes at very long range to make people's days suck.
Yeah.
After all, there are 5 very prominent launchers in front and 2 in the back.
Yeah.
So, even if the ship is running away from you, it's still going to be firing artillery shells at you. Because screw you.
Right. So, if this thing was born in Andoria, 2382, I'd say this thing probably entered production at around that time. Because, well, even if Starfleet was going isolationist, You need artillery cruisers if you're going to maintain that kind of profile.
Well, they still had a lot of Steamrunner class vessels around, so it was decided it was surplus to requirements until the Steamrunners started aging. The Akira class is only barely a decade younger.
Fair enough. So maybe so. Okay, so prototype again.
Limited production until after Frontier Day.
Okay.
Because Frontier Day is when it really started to get better.
Yep. So we won't worry about an extra stat line for the production model. You can just do refits.
I'm going to presume that would just improve everything. Better power, better structure.
Well, we've got 2340 to 2382. We're up into the... We need 4 more points. So let's see. I'd say maybe weapons to 10. Maybe weapons to 11 even. Yeah, weapons to 11. This thing needs more boom. And let's see. Engines up to 9. Make it a little faster and more powerful.
So it can get away from anyone trying to shoot at it.
Yeah.
Not that it matters when it can shoot back.
Yeah. If someone's trying to get a beat on it, it can get some distance to bring its artillery to bear quicker.
It has an aft photon. It has an aft launcher. I think it can do fire on the move.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is, if you get difficulty increases when you're firing outside of the range of the weapon, and I'm not talking like long beyond range. I'm also talking inside. I think, if I remember correctly. So it can move faster to get more range, so it can let loose its heavier artillery. Because I mean, that is kind of a thing for an artillery vessel. It can't fire its best guns close in. So if someone tries getting close in, it needs the ability to move to keep the distance, so it can keep using its big guns. So let's see. Comms 10, computers 9, engines 9, sensors 9, structure 9, weapons 11. 1 more point.
Structure
10. Okay.
It may be a mobile artillery cruiser, but if it gets into combat, it has to survive.
Yep. I'd say the department values are the same. 1 point in con, 2 points in security.
For one obvious reason.
Yep. And weapons, you did say phaser cannon, so I've put them on the list. Otherwise, it's the same. Phaser rays, photon torpedoes, tricobalt torpedoes, strength 3, tractor beam.
Why change anything?
Yep, same with the talents. Rapid fire torpedo launcher, secondary reactors.
Well, I suppose that rounds up this particular boat.
Yep. Federation Starship descriptor trait, perfectly fine.
Artillery cruiser.
Well, yeah, that can be like for a mission profile. But yeah, that is the Steamrunner and the Appalachia. Basically, while the book makes this thing a recon boat, that ignores its role in 2 of the best games of the early 2000s.
Of the early 2000s? Try ever.
Fair enough. Yeah, Armada and Armada 2 are the best games, period. But, yeah. Seriously. This thing is not a recon boat. It is artillery. It is artillery. It is combat. And if you see some of these things, if you see Steamrunners or Appalachians in a Federation force, and you're an enemy, and you're an enemy of the Federation, you better start sweating or running
Or hunkering down.
Yeah,
But hunkering down just prolongs the pain.
yeah. Bye bye.